My name is Stefan Behlert. I'm one of the release managers for the enterprise at SUSE. I want to talk to you today about Service Pack 2 of Code 12 and what's new there. And before we start, I always have one question for you, one or two. The first one is, who of you is using SLE 11? Quite a lot, thank you. Who's using Code 12? Thank you. Code 12 GA on SP1? SP2? Okay, you don't count. He produced it, he helped producing it. So in the last session when I had this, we already had someone using it in production one day after. So I was curious. So what we will talk today about is, I will first give you some general information. Then we will talk about how you get to SP2. And of course, where you're most interested, most likely, a little bit into the details there. We have 1 hour, so it will be a little bit of key features with a broader overview and some more details. And if we have time left, which I hope we have, a short glance towards SP3 and what to expect there. In case you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, and I'll try to answer them immediately. So, for those, most of you have already using Code 12, so you're familiar with that life cycle. We changed it from Code 11. You see here, we have yearly service packs now compared to Code 11. That means we had last year around that time SP1. We will around this time next year have SP3. And around this year, this time, we have SP2. LTSS, also with 12 GA available. And you see an overlap of half a month, which is not a big difference compared to what we had in Code 11. There's one thing I wanted to point out. The higher service packs are not yet sure when we will do them, if we will keep the yearly schedules there, or if we say, due to the reduced amount of updates needed there, we will maybe skip to a slightly different schedule. So don't take this yet as written in stone. And for those of you interested, the slides are, as far as I know, available from the conference webpage afterwards. So you have seen we have yearly service packs. That was one of the reasons why we looked at it and said the way we produced service pack with Code 11, where you had always a full-blown up service pack with a lot of changes, a lot of bug fixes integrated, that's not really going to work out on a yearly service pack. That's not the best way. So we decided to do two kinds of service pack. We have a consolidation service pack and a refresh service pack. SP2 is a refresh release, SP1 was a consolidation release, and SP3 will also be a consolidation release. What does this mean? Consolidation means for us, we reduce the amount of features that we do new, we keep the changes simple, and we add only a few selected features. Because without features, life for engineers would be boring. A refresh release now is different. A refresh release means features, massive upgrades of versions, but keeping still everything stable, upgradable, and still usable. So you see here, we have a kernel version upgrade. We'll come to that later. We have significant hardware enablement, which goes into the amount of adding a new platform even. But, of course, and that's the important part, just changing everything is not the best way for an enterprise. We want to be also on a constant way. We want to be solid and traditionally seen, also not change too much. So certifications, we want to keep them and we managed that also. So we kept everything that is important for you. Especially on the security certification side, we have added, or we stay compliant with the NIST certification. Those of you who are affected by it, that they need to fulfill the FISMA or the FIPS certifications. We have started the process of certifying SP2. Who of you is affected by FIPS or needs to be FIPS certified? None? Good, you're lucky. The fact with FIPS is that you get a certification for a certain binary package and exact that binary package. So even if you want an update later, that updated package will not be certified and you will lose the certification on your machine. So with a new service pack, we normally recertify those big modules, FIPS modules as they are called, that are important and that have changed. And we are doing this for kernel, OpenSSL, and OpenSSH. Disclaimer here, we have started the process, but it's a months-long process, so this is still ongoing. I'm expecting it to come in the next few months. We don't know for certain when, simply because that's in the hand of the certifier. And of course, our internal security standards, processes, and everything else that gave us the common criteria certification are also still in place. So let's talk a little bit how you get to SP2. Upgrade. So offline, which means with a media, you can upgrade from SP4, from 12GA, SP1, everything available, and go directly to SP2. If you're doing an online upgrade, that means through the network, we only support 12GA and 12SP1. These are the methods that we have tested extensively and that are proven to work. You see here, we say other combinations are not supported. That does not mean they may not work, but we are saying we have not tested it. We don't know. In a lot of cases, they may work, but we are not recommending it, and I would really discourage it. There's one disclaimer. If you have a FIPS certification and are required to run the FIPS certification on your machine, you most likely have the certification module with the FIPS packages installed, and there the system cannot do the upgrade automatically without manual intervention. Reason is the system would have to guess if you want to keep the FIPS certification or not. Artificial intelligence, we don't have it yet. It's upcoming in the next year, 1,000 or so. So therefore you have to manually intervene here. You have seen on the upgrade page, you can upgrade from 12 SP1 to SP2. You're familiar with that. We had this in code 11. You started with SP1, you get to SP2, SP3, SP4. Now a lot of people said, oh man, if I have 11 SP1, I want to go directly to 11 SP4. And we say, no, sorry, the system is not fit for that. With code 12, we made the system fit. So if you're running 12GA, you can jump directly to SP2. That's possible, it's supported, it's working. We did a lot of tests there. And when SP3 will come out, you have the next choice. You can, if you're still on SP1, go to SP3. From GA, most likely also to SP3. So we have added this new opportunity so you don't have to follow every service pack directly. You can jump, no need to go the long way. Keep in mind, this is only for 12, not for 11. Unfortunate, because you need to do a lot of things and adapt it. Recommendation, if you're on 12GA, install all the updates and do then the migration. Simply because we fixed a few things that are required for that. Post 12 GA, of course, because in hindsight it's a lot easier to see what you need to do. An exception here, SLED. Why is it not supported for SLED? Simply because we have not tested it intensively. Personally, and that's my personal opinion, it will work in a lot of cases, not in all. There are a few exceptions, definitely, where it's most likely not working. We have not tested it, therefore we say we are not supporting it currently. Sorry for that. If you want that supported, there's the guy in the audience, Frederick, wave, talk to him. He's happy to collect your requests there. Oh, and as I got asked in the other session, yes, this is working through all the tools that we have made available. SUSE Manager, Super, Yast, whatever you have. If you have an SMT, it works, you can skip, no problem. So let's get a little bit into the key features. SP2, we upgraded to kernel 4.4. You remember on 12 GA, we had kernel 3.12. We kept that for SP1. Only the minor version in the back ended, went up. With SP2, we are now at 4.4. Now, 4.4 is a little bit misleading because when we started the development, we chose to go with 4.4 for a simple reason. It was the available kernel. It was the one that looked most stable with the least number of regressions. And we started the hardening process there. Vanilla kernels from upstream, when they come out, they normally have a few bugs, one or two, a few regressions compared to the rest. Performance, you have to invest a little bit of time. So we started that with 4.4. But life goes on, the kernel develops, and we took, of course, patches from higher kernel versions into our kernel version 4.4. So you have there fixes that are also in 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, or even 4.8. And fixes we found, or patches that we created for 4.4 that were not in the newer kernels were also upstreamed and made available. So don't let you get irritated too much from the 4.4. It's much newer than it looks, but it's much more stable than the latest kernel. Definitely is. New technologies. No refresh release without new technologies. So we worked intensively with our partners to get a few things added there that are brand new. The NVDIM stuff, we will come to that later also a little bit. We added the OmniPass and the data plane develop kit and integrated it. For these, I will come later. I have slides for that. So I'm not going too deep into that. Important, if you had installed the kernel Xen package, you will notice when you migrate to SP2 or do a new installation, it's gone. No longer available, but that doesn't mean that Xen is not available. No, Xen is now integrated into kernel default that had some advantages on the performance and technological side. And if you migrate now and had installed kernel Xen, you will get automatically kernel default. So don't be surprised. Xen is still available. It works still. Just the name has changed. Which also is good because you don't have to think too much when you install. If you want kernel default or kernel Xen, you just take one and a set. One of the requests we had constantly in the last few years was TPM in version 2.0. We always said, oh, it's not really fit, it's not complete, there are still questions open, we cannot support it. But with SP2, this message is now different. We have added quite some packages to support it. It's getting stable, it's getting mature. And we now have TPM 2.0. So if you have waited for years for it to come, now it's there, test it, try it, and enjoy it. For those that are not simple working on consoles and the hardcore server stuff, but have need for graphical stuff and administration tools, we upgraded the desktop. GNOME 3.20 is it for most of the packages. Some packages are still on a slightly older version where we didn't seem it fit to upgrade because the changes that were coming with the new one were not stable enough or not fitting really into the whole system. 3.20 also on the SLED product with a lot of things. If you have intensive need for server plus desktop, consider to install SLES plus the workstation extension that we have introduced with Code 12. That gives you the full picture and a lot of graphical applications. The last 2 lines, well, the usual. We had hardware support added, driver updates. But, of course, we looked at the APIs and the ABIs kept stable. So a lot of the stuff that you had running on SP2 will also run on SP2. There's, of course, one exception. If you have something that is dependent on the kernel, like a self-compiled kernel module, there you have to look because a new kernel version may change that and you may have to recompile your kernel module. New technologies, NVDIM. You have heard about that also in several of the keynotes. It's brand new. We worked intensively with Intel there, also with upstream. We sent a lot of patches upstream and did a lot of kernel fixes there. So if you look at vanilla kernel 4.4 and the NVDIM support there, that's rather flaky and I would not recommend to use it. We have added a lot of patches. We've fixed a lot of stuff. It's now working reliably with some exceptions. And that's the reason why, if you look here, it's marked as a tech preview. So there are basically 2 modes or 2 scenarios where you can use NVDIM. One is as a disk device for high performance computing and metadata and other stuff to be stored. And the second scenario is using it as system memory that survives if you plug the power or anything else. Now, on the second part, we are not there yet. This is not really 100% working reliably, so we are currently not supporting that. The first part, we have worked with the hardware vendors excessively, and we are supporting it on certified hardware. Why that remark on certified hardware? The reason is very simple. If you look here, the NFIT, that's the firmware technology that is used, and the NVDIM stuff requires a lot of support from the firmware and the ACPI implementation on the machine. So you need at least ACPI 6 on the machine. You need an ACPI implementation in the BIOS that supports it and that gives you the right values on the right keys. And frankly speaking, all of you who've worked closer with ACPI and BIOS implementation, that's varying in the quality, to be careful. So if everything is implemented right there, it works perfectly and it works really good. But currently, we are not there yet. The technology is relatively young. So even the BIOS implementers are learning there a little bit. And the interpretation of the standard is not yet where we want it to be. Thus, we support it in the disk device scenario with certified hardware. You can check the release notes. We will update also our documentation, what is supported and what not. Tech preview, just to make you aware of that, means we are convinced the technology is ripe, it's good, but we have not tested everything. We recommend if you use it in a production environment, test that everything is working the way you expect it. We have not tested every scenario. We are not yet there where we say we can unconditionally support it, but we are planning to do so very soon. It might be with one of the next maintenance updates, but latest with SP3, that's currently our plan. In case you have need for that with a machine that we have not certified, contact us and we will work with you and the hardware vendor to see what we can do there and to get it done. Another technology that came up in the last year and got more and more important is the next generic fabric. You all know about OFED, I think. If you're in the mainframe business, definitely. So the next thing will be Intel OmniPath. It's integrated in SP2. We have it there. We have also graphical interfaces for managing it in case you need it. I'm not saying much more about that. If you have interest on that, visit us at the booth and we will talk about that. Software-defined everything is the keyword currently. We don't have software-defined software yet, but we're working close to getting software-defined network. And one of the foundations that you need for that is that you need the data plane development kit together with Open vSwitch. That's the foundation. That's not all you need to get it. You need on top later other stuff. But we start with SP2 to integrate these into our product so we can base on that and be ready for more stuff there. There's also later today a presentation about network virtualization. I recommend you to visit that to see where the further plans are going there. We have integrated, as mentioned, DPDK as well as support here for Open vSwitch. That's not so easy as it sounds because these are two independent products at the moment with different life cycles and different support statements. So if you have the long-term support upstream for one version, it's not working with the long-term support version of the other project, which is really great. If you want that on the long-term supported, you need SP2 because we have used two versions that work together and we are supporting it for quite a while. What does it do for you? Well, in fact, it's the basic that you need when you go towards SDN, want to do your own package processing there and fast package transmission on the network. A little bit more exciting was for us to add a new platform. We have ARM now available. ARM is a little bit difficult when you say the ARM platform and AR64. Everybody is understanding a little bit different there. So let me make two remarks. First, it's 64-bit only that we have. And the AR64 platform, which is the ARM V8A version. So it's very specific there. We know there are a lot of different hardware implementations out there. All ARM hardware vendors do it a little bit different. Not big differences, but small differences. And therefore, we are currently working with OEMs only and support only ARM with certain OEMs because we want you to get the best experience there. You can already buy ARM hardware outside with SLES installed on top of it. So it's available there. We are working with several OEMs, so we will see new and more offerings there in the near future. But currently, we are only supporting it together with OEMs. Nevertheless, if you want to play with it, it's available. It's available for download. And as you have heard in one or two of the keynotes, there's also that small device, the Raspberry Pi, that runs on ARM. There are images available for that also. So in case you want to play around with it, use it, download it, test it. Just be aware, if you want to be supported on it, there's only for certain hardware. Not because we don't want to, just because we can't with all the different small differences you see there. One of the questions that comes up already in several sessions here around the SUSECON was, do you have all the packages that you have on the other platforms? And the answer is nearly. There are a few ones that are platform specific. So if you expect S392s on ARM, I have to say no, that's not the case. But I think we have around 3,000 binary packages, 3,300, something like that. And I would say less than 1% of those that can run in theory on the ARM platform are not available. So it's a few ones, not many. We have ported and adapted everything else there, and it's running. Even KVM is running there. So in case you're interested, you most likely will not miss anything because it's really only a very limited number of packages that is not used by everybody. We hope to get completely on par soon. Currently, we're still a little bit struggling there. Since most of you here use already SLE12, you know most likely about the module concept that we had there. The modules are, for those not familiar with it, in short, repositories that you get for free with a SLES subscription. So once you have registered, you get them. They have additional packages and applications that are not on the SLES images itself. Some of the modules have a different life cycle. In short terms, it's kind of functional grouped packages for certain topics. And one of these topics that is now coming and where we add to the ecosystem is HPC. So this module will come soon in the next days, most likely next 2 weeks even, if it takes a longer time to publish it. It will contain packages that are useful for the high performance computing. Since the module is still growing, I was asked not to give you an exact list to not make any false expectations here. As the question comes up sometimes, no, we did not remove for any module any package from the core. So everything that's available on SLES is still there. It's additional stuff only. It's not stuff taken out. It's additional stuff that you get for free. And as mentioned, available soon, next 14 days, I would say. To get it, to install it, just go into the YAST system, onto additional products, select it, and it's easily available. So these were the big topics there, or a selection of it. But of course, we had a lot of small stuff that was also changed, and I want to give you a short overview of that. Be certain that I leave out a lot of stuff there, and a lot of packages. As mentioned, 3,300 packages overall, and yeah, I would say 50% at least were updated to a new version with bug fixes or sometimes new features. So if I would tell them all now, well, I guess you would be a little bit tired at the end. So one thing we did upgrade was systemd. The version now available is 2.28. We are still using Wicket and not the systemd networkd. Since one person asked in the other session what I meant with still use, there's no plan to change this. It's just because we got questions, will you switch to systemd networkd? No, we will not. There are functions in Wicket that are important and vital and that are not available with the networkd of systemd. So we keep it, and even the upcoming SLE 13 will have Wicket. So just to make this clear, there's no change planned. With the new version of systemd, there are some changes nevertheless. So you all know we have made it possible that if you have still old SUS5 init scripts, you could use them still. So systemd would pass them, integrate them, and use them like you would do with the systemd config files. This is still possible. There's no change there. We have adapted another bunch of config files and systemd init script to systemd. Not all yet. It's not easy with some of the packages because the init files are rather growing over the year, and some of them are very complex and not so easy to transform to systemd and the new concepts there. Nevertheless, we tried to make systemd also to be more exact and precise and better performing when it comes to these SUS5 init scripts. And that came with one cost, unfortunately. So in the past, when you had your system running and you added a new SUS5 init script because you had something new, it was automatically detected by systemd and used. Currently, with SP2, this is unfortunately not the case. You have to explicitly say, hey, I have something new, please reload the config there. That's the only change we have currently that is incompatible to the rest that we had. I hope very much that not many of you are affected by it. I think most of the packages nowadays that are new have already systemd files, and as mentioned, we also try to convert more and more of the old ones. Something that you will not even notice, most likely, we also upgraded the glibc. glibc is backward compatible, no change there. Everything that you had compiled with an old glibc working will continue to work. It's just for completeness to mention it, so you're not surprised. Some people get nervous when they see such a main library updated. No problem there. The glibc upstream developers are doing an extremely good job to be backward compatible. We wish everybody would be so strict as they are. That would make life a lot more easier. One of the modules we have is the toolchain module. You know, when we released 12 GA, we had GCC 4.8 on that and used that to compile the distribution. We are still using that to compile all the packages that we ship. And we are still using it as system compiler. But you know, life goes on, and we meanwhile have outside GCC 6, which you need for some applications to compile, and because it's producing some faster code and some faster, or has less bugs inside in some areas. So if you are in need to use GCC 6, you can do that. You simply install the toolchain module and then use the compiler that is there. That's no problem because the runtime libraries that you need to run both applications that are compiled with 4.8 or GCC 6 are there. They are shipped and they will also be updated in about a year or so when GCC 7 is going into the toolchain module. One of the recommendations when you should use GCC 6 is definitely if you're on the ARM platform. 4.8 is when it comes to ARM, it works in a lot of cases, but working is relative in that area because ARM is developing relatively fast. So if you're on the ARM platform, definitely use for your applications GCC 6. There's one exception when you cannot use GCC 6. That's if you have a kernel module and you want to compile it yourself. You have to use GCC 4.8. It's not possible to combine a GCC 4.8 compiled kernel with a kernel module that is compiled with GCC 6. That's a technical limitation which we cannot do anything about, unfortunately. So this is the only thing you have to be careful about. One thing that I hate to mention is that we updated the CoreUtils to version 8.25. Why do I hate it? Because it brings a lot of cool stuff with it and a lot of improvements. But unfortunately, and that's what I hate about it, there's one thing where it changed the behaviors, and that's concerning the change root command and the environment there. So in some scenarios, you have to be careful and to change your parameters there when doing a change root. I will not go into details here. We have documented these in the release notes as well as in the documentation of the package. If you're using a changed root environment, please check there what you have to adapt it and if you're affected. It's for certain cases. We are sorry for that, but the benefits were higher in that case. OpenSSH, we had previously version 6.6, and when upstream went on the way to 7.2, they looked also at the default values and the default settings of OpenSSH 8, and they decided to be much more strict there. So they wanted to be even more secure to a level where you have really trouble of using the system in the way where you intend it. But the default values of 7.2 upstream are much more stricter than they ever have been before. If you do now an upgrade, that would be really problematic if you would have used the same default values. If you have not changed your default settings there, because in some cases you wouldn't even have been able to log in remote in the machine. We said this is not acceptable. We want to be as unsurprising as possible in that area. So we changed the default values that upstream used to the way we had it in SP1. So if you read documentation from upstream, you have different default values mentioned there than in our documentation. The reason for that is very simple. We want it to be not surprising when you do the migration. You can, of course, switch to the more strict values, and if you have changed your settings before in SP1, the settings will also be reused. But the default values, if you do no change, are now identically in 7.2 as they were in 6.6. It's documented what we changed, it's several values. It's also documented what changes or what effects these changes have. If you want to be even more secure than you currently are, have a look there. But in these cases, you most likely have also changed the default values in SP1 already. Other changes and upgrades of a few of the most often used packages, you see it here. I'm not repeating it. For Firefox, of course, we constantly upgrade there to the latest ESR version. So I think we're currently at 54.45. I'm not sure if will come soon. So that's the reason for the X there. Everything else you see here. There's one big change on the OFED packages that came from upstream. In the past, upstream used the OFED packages are a real big bunch of packages. And they were branded, let's say it in that way, under one version in the past by upstream. So you had, if we talked about OFED 3.12, that was a big bunch of packages that were all guaranteed to work together and tagged as such. That habit has been dropped by upstream. So currently all the OFED packages are doing their own versioning. You have to look for yourself which packages works together with the other. And that's something we did for you. That's why you see no version here, because there's no combined upstream version any longer. So you cannot say this is OFED 4. something. That's the bad thing here. We don't want to give it a number, to be honest, because it would only be misleading and different from upstream there. But we updated all of the OFED packages to a version that works together with the rest of the OFED package selection. Two features I was asked to mention also. They are not upgrades itself. So you can add your registration codes to an USB stick in a file and simply add that USB stick while installation, and you will not be asked for the registration code, but it will be automatically taken. So if you don't want to type that long registration code, That's something to make life a little bit easier for you. And another important thing we changed is on the super program. So if you're familiar with super, you can now type super lifecycle and then, for example, a package name or keep it off. And you will get information how long the package lifecycle still is, or how long the service pack lifecycle, when it will end, or the code stream itself. Reason for that is that I mentioned it briefly, the modules have a different life cycles and the packages there. And we want to make it a little bit more transparent there, how long a certain package is still valid, when it will end and time out. This is important for those modules where we say we have only a limited number of years of lifetime, and then you will go to the next big version. We are planning to invest there more, to give you more information also, and an automatism to inform you when things will time out, but this is not yet completely done with SP2 because we don't also want you to get buried under a lot of notification that you don't want. So this is still work in progress, but you can try out the super life cycle on SP2 and see how long your packages are still valid. So I was a little bit faster than in the last session, though we were looking, I give you a short outlook on SP3. SP3, let's go a little bit back first to the beginning of the session. We talked about consolidation and refresh releases. You see it here. SP3 will be one of these consolidation releases, which simply means the usual stability of APIs and ABIs, but the number of features will be less than we have with SP2. The emphasis is on getting things that we have more mature, smaller feature improvements, bug fixes, fixing usability where we see that it might be needed, and reacting on the comments and the input that we get from you. So no kernel version change here. We will stay on 4.4. Dot something. That number will of course climb, but it will be bug fixes and less intensive features there. Nevertheless, we will of course enable hardware also with SP3, but it will be on a limited range there compared to what we have seen with SP2. On the platform side, no changes planned, and I'm happy that we will not add another platform because that's always quite some troubles and actions. So we will stay with the usual ones that we have with SP2. On the ARM side, we will intensify that and make it more, or will support a little bit more than we have currently, and bring that completely on par with the rest. Planned release Q3 2017. It's a little bit vague, I know. I was asked for some more concrete date. To be honest, I can't give it to you. I have a date for engineering where we want to be finished, but that's the date for engineering, and there's a marketing and a launch date which we will only decide later when we are a little bit more into the development phase, and that's done by product management and marketing. And currently that's the closest that I can give you. It's Q3. I'm sorry for that, no concrete date here. And the engineering date, well, you know how engineers are. They try to keep it, but a little bit of leeway is always possible. One question to you here. Has anybody here joined the public beta program? Except you, Frederick, I know you did. You have? Great. So, for all those of you who have not joined, which is the majority, we had with every release a beta program, year over year, with a limited number of participants. That limited number was in the 2, max 3-digit number, where we said we are not able to handle the input of more people, and we want to limit it to a certain amount of people there. With SP2, we went a different way. We said, let's try it and open up for everybody. So everybody who's sitting here could have joined in SP2 and got the images relatively early. We managed this quite successfully. We were surprised because a lot of input that came in was really helpful, and we managed to also process it. We don't want you to give feedback to us and then you have to wait for weeks and weeks and weeks until something happens about that. That was not the case. Don't get me wrong, not all the bugs that were filed through that beta program are fixed. Sorry for that. I had one customer sitting in the last session that said, and I'm quoting him here, and I hope you don't mind, who said, all the bugs that mattered to me were fixed. And that's what we try with that. We look, there are bugs that are really problematic for you as a customer. There are bugs that are annoying and some that would nice to be fixed. And we try to fix all the bugs that matter that come there. With SP3, we decided after the experience we had with SP2 to have again public betas. You see here the URL where you can join the public beta program. You don't have to photograph it. It's easily findable on the web pages, as well as the slides will be available, as mentioned. I can only encourage you to join it. We really need your input there because there's a lot of different hardware and scenarios out there. Our QA is trying to do all the different complex scenarios that are there, but it's limited. And honestly, with SP2, we also stumbled over scenarios where we said, what? That is working? And they said, yes, sure. And we said, hey, great. We never thought about doing it in that way. And that helps us to improve internally in our QA. That helps you because bugs that you find early will be fixed when SP3 comes out. And some of those bugs that we find we would never have found without help of you, because however complex you think of a scenario, there's always somebody out there who has a much more complex one. And therefore, join us. You get a glance on SP3 relatively early. I'm not promising you get all your bugs fixed, but a lot of those, and hopefully all that matters. So please join us here. The SP3 development has started already. We are currently on the internal development phase. That means there are no images available yet. But the earlier you apply for it, the more time we have to set up everything, to give you everything we need and to plan for it. And once the images come out, you are there and you can't miss it. So feel free to apply now. And with that, I'm at the end and open for questions. And just a reminder, we have also a booth there in the technology showcase. So in case you have very concrete, very specific problems with your installation, come by and we will see that we can help you there, or at least give you some pointers where we can continue on. So, any questions?
I have a general question on the HPC module. I know you can't talk about the specific features. Will it be platform agnostic?
You mean compiled for specific platforms, or?
Meaning that it's going to be hardware agnostic.
Yeah.
That the features that should run for an HPC stack on the mainframe and the power. I mean, obviously it's got a different processor, but it should also run on Intel and as well as Power 8. Or you don't even know that.
I've only limited information there currently. What I can tell you is that the first platform that we will support is x86-64. There are more planned, but that's all that I can currently tell you. I know there are considerations how to make it also possible for specific hardware to be optimized there, but not in the first step, as far as it seems.
now that you have a new service pack out, still issue KGRAP style patches for earlier service packs?
You can get kgraph live patching for kernels that are maximum 1 year old. So this is still the case? Yes. So for GA currently, for the first kernel there, it would depend a lot on your service contract and how much money you throw at us, to be honest. But it's still possible for the old service packs, yes. And we are still doing it. Other questions? That's a good question, thank you. The question was if the NVDIMM technology requires specific hardware. The answer is yes, in short. So you have the NVDIMM stuff. There are different flavors of it. If you look for NVDIMM N, M, and a few combinations of that, the software here supports that currently without specific differentiations. The problem is more in the area of the firmware of the machines. Yes, some hardware vendors have, how to say it, different features inside of what they support on the NVDIMM hardware level, like batteries for the NVDIMM stuff and other things. But that's currently very hardware specific and not really supported by the software. Also, if you look at the announcements from Intel with regard to their Apache Apache Cross, I'm always getting that a little bit confused, sorry. That hardware is not out yet from Intel. We are not supporting it therefore yet because it's not there. But it will definitely require also some software adaptations because it has different types of being accessed by the various ACPI codes. Does this answer roughly the question? Yeah. And as mentioned, we are a little bit reliant there on the implementation on the BIOS, which is on the vendor level. Therefore, our restrictions that we put on it. More questions? If not, then thank you everybody for joining. Have a nice SUSECON.